Hello everybody, Mr. Peterson here. First things first, I hope all of you and to whoever is listening that you are staying safe and corona-free during these crazy times. Just remember to remain optimistic and know everything is going to end eventually. As you know, my class motto is life, liberty, and the pursuit of history, and no coronavirus is going to halt my train. With that being said, we are going to move on to section 3 of chapter 6 about nationalism, which is titled Italian Unification. Before this party can truly get started, I want everyone to understand that as I go through this presentation, Italian unification is going to be very similar to German unification. But what I don't want you to get mixed up is that actually Italian unification happens before Germany unifies. So yes, our textbook talks about German unification first. Don't get it confused, because actually Italian unification happens before Germany does. So with that being said, pitter patter, let's go ahead and get at her. The Italian Peninsula. In 1813, Italian-speaking areas were divided up into independent states. Very weird, so was Germany. So remember in 1813, that is when the different national powers at this time get together and they start to divvy out the land that Napoleon Bonaparte created during his reign. So here we're going to see the northern part of Italy is going to be controlled by the Austrian Habsburg Empire, just like Germany, that's odd. And the southern half, the southern boot, is going to be controlled by a French Bourbon ruler, but his alliances are actually going to go towards the Austrian Habsburg Empire anyways. So all in all here, we're going to see the Austrian Habsburg Empire is going to be pretty much in control of the entire Italian-speaking areas at this time. But we're going to see the locals, they're going to identify with their local regions. So those who were living in Florence at the time, they're going to be known as Tuscans. Those living in Venice, they're going to be known as the Venetians. And those who are living in Naples are going to be known as the Neapolitans. So to give a little visual here, obviously you can see the northern half of Italy divided up into independent states controlled by the Austrian Habsburg Empire. And then you're going to see the southern boot. That's the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, controlled by that French Bourbon ruler, even though his alliances go towards the Austrian Habsburg Empire anyways. But what I want you to see here is, if you see the blue, that is France. Right next to France, you're going to see a little territory, and it is labeled the Kingdom of Sardinia. Keep in mind, I'm going to be bringing them back up several times. They're going to play a pretty big role into the Italian unification process. In terms of sparking nationalism, here Italy actually is able to set themselves apart from Germany based on how they were able to do that. What the independent Italian states decided to do was they established secret societies, which we can see them kind of forming in between 1820 and 1848. And the most well-known secret society is called Young Italy, which was formed by a nationalistic leader named Giuseppe Mazzini. Now, he is a very influential, prominent person to know. Okay, he is known as the heart because he's the one that gets the ball rolling for Italian independence. Okay, so he's a very big figure in all this. And his goal was to constitute Italy as one free, independent Republican nation. And so what they would do was that he would lead different revolts to try to expel Austrian Empire control. But now, to picture this, you have a very small society, very small little group going against a massive established army. So if you can picture this, it did not work too well. But he was later exiled, but his actual goal was accomplished because his work planted the seed for future nationalists down the road to continue to further and fight for Italian independence. So a little quote that was stated by Giuseppe Mazzini is, "Ideas grow quickly when watered down by the blood of the martyrs." And just to refresh, a martyr is someone who dies for their beliefs. So these people from the secret societies who ended up losing their lives, it actually sparked other people to continue on and fight for Italian unification. Moving on to the struggle for Italy. So this is where you're going to start to really see the similarities that the Italian unification process has with the German unification process. So the Risorgimento, that was just known as the Italian nationalist movement. So that's the term for it. And if you couldn't tell already, the secret societies were going to need some extra help. There was no way they were going to be able to take on an established army that the Austrian Habsburg Empire possessed. So this is where you start to see the leadership is passed to the Kingdom of Sardinia. So how is this similar to Germany's case? Well, as you know, the Kingdom of Prussia ended up taking control of the German unification process. Long story short, German unification, they become Germany, thanks to the Kingdom of Prussia. But here, in the same similar case, it's passed to the Kingdom of Sardinia. So these two characters here, the one on the left is Victor Emmanuel II, who was the constitutional monarch of the Kingdom of Sardinia. And you can't tell me, based on his photograph, that you would not fight for him. He is a sweet-looking dude, and I would fight for him immediately. And the dude on the right is Count Camillo Cavour, who is the Prime Minister. So right here, you can already see the similarities. So you can correlate Victor Emmanuel to King Wilhelm, and then you can correlate Count Camillo Cavour to Otto von Bismarck, as he is the Prime Minister. So let's take a closer look at Count Camillo Cavour. In 1852, he was appointed to the Prime Minister of Sardinia, and like Otto von Bismarck, he was also a master of realpolitik. So every move and every decision that he made was towards the interest of his loyalties. In this case, was to Victor Emmanuel II and the Kingdom of Sardinia as a whole. But before he was able to do anything, first things first, he had to improve Sardinia's economy. So here he improves agriculture, he builds railroads, and he also establishes free trade. Because his long-term goal is to expel Austrian power to these Italian-speaking states. He wants to add them to the Kingdom of Sardinia. In order for Cavour to carry out those long-term plans, he knows he's going to need a little help. So here, you see Cavour is going to use his realpolitik to involve Sardinia in the Crimean War, where they ally with Britain and France against Russia. So doing so, Sardinia is able to receive some respect from other nations. And with that respect, he's able to develop a secret deal with France, who promised aid in case of a war with Austria. So that is Cavour's ideal position he wants. And would you like to take a guess what Cavour did? Well, if you guessed a war erupted with Austria, you are absolutely correct. So with the French, with assistance from France, Austria was defeated and Lombardy was annexed. So this caused other Italian states to begin overthrowing the Austrian influence within their territory. And here they started to join Sardinia as well. So they are just pushing closer and closer towards a completely unified Italy. Now let's get to the good stuff with the national icon Giuseppe Garibaldi. Now what makes him a national icon is because in his younger years, in the early 1820s, he was actually involved with the secret society, the Young Italy. So yes, he was actually a very strong ally of Giuseppe Mazzini. But when things began to fizzle out with that secret society, Mazzini got exiled, there was actually a price on Garibaldi's head. So to avoid execution, Garibaldi actually catches a ship and moves to South America, right in Uruguay. Now this is what heroicized Garibaldi, is because Uruguay was actually fighting for their own independence from Brazil. So with that in mind, Garibaldi actually raises his own army there and helps them fight and win independence. So that's just crazy. He's an Italian man living in South America and fighting in South America for a cause that he really doesn't have anything to do with. So that right there pretty much puts him on the national pedestal. Everybody knows who Garibaldi is. So around the 1860s come back around, Garibaldi actually makes his way back to Italy to help fight for his home country's independence. So he is mainly involved in the southern aspect, in the two kingdom of Sicilies in Italy. He was actually given the opportunity to raise a 1,000 volunteer army to invade the southern tip. And this army was famously known as the Red Shirts. Now, when he was in Uruguay, the troops there that he was in command of wore red shirts. He found a shipment of red shirts that were going to be transported to a butcher factory in Argentina. And now, if you think about it, butchers, you want to wear red shirts because if you wear a white shirt, it'll just be covered in blood and you'll look like a psychopath. So my theory here is that he wanted to actually wear red shirts so he can go out and slaughter his enemy. You can take that if you want it. That's my version. I like it. I'm rolling with it. But essentially, he fought his way up the southern tip, up the heel of the boot of Italy, and essentially they end up in Naples, where Italy is essentially claimed unified at last. With Italy finally achieving their independence from Austria, they needed a king. So here is where we see Victor Emmanuel II is crowned King of Italy in 1861. But the rest of the Italian-speaking areas were not essentially within Italy at that time. But they were eventually, as we see in 1866, after the Austro-Prussian War, Venetia was finally returned to Italy, and then again in the Franco-Prussian War in 1870, the French troops finally withdrew from Rome, which is located in the center of Italy. And that is where we truly and finally see Italy is unified at last. And like any new nation, of course they're going to go through different trials. So the first thing we see is there was actually quite a bit of division. The first one that's worth mentioning is it was kind of North versus South. And you can actually kind of compare this to the American Civil War from the North versus the South. So the North, it definitely had more cities. It was more of a richer business life culture compared to the South, while it was rural, a lot poorer with a higher population. And the other division came from the state and the Roman Catholic Church. Because actually the Roman Catholic Church, the Pope was against unification. They thought that once they were unified, that it was going to be more religious toleration and more religious was going to be included, where they just wanted it to be Roman Catholics. So the Pope was actually preaching against unification and against creating their own Italian state. But eventually progress is going to come as industrialization finally strikes and the economy begins to develop more and more, where you start to see improved education and working conditions, which also now this might be looked at as a bad thing, but really it wasn't, because Italians began to migrate, which started to fluctuate the population a little bit better. And just to wrap everything up, I wanted to give this slide right here to help you understand the notable figures a little bit better. So the heart of Italy would be Giuseppe Mazzini, as he was the one who kind of got the ball rolling for Italian unification with these secret societies. The brain would be Count Camillo Cavour, who was the Prime Minister of Sardinia, who used realpolitik to kind of figure out what's best for his interests. The muscle would be Giuseppe Garibaldi, him and his 1,000 volunteer army of red shirts, kind of muscling their way through to finalize Italian unification. And lastly would be Victor Emmanuel II, who was the constitutional monarch of Sardinia, but once everything became known, the people of Italy granted it to him as the king. So that wraps up this presentation on Italian unification.